When we think about Genghis Khan, the image that instantly pops into our heads is usually that of a singular, spontaneous military genius,
Right.
a whirlwind of conquest who just erupted seemingly out of nowhere, from the harsh Mongolian steppes to, change the world map forever. It really feels like a story that starts from zero.
And that, historically, is where the popular image just completely breaks down. The sources you've shared with us reveal a much deeper, more fascinating truth.
Which is?
Genghis Khan was absolutely not an innovator pulling a blueprint out of thin air. He was a restorer, a brilliant synthesist who resurrected a state system that had been honed and practiced and refined by powerful Turkic peoples for 7 centuries before he was even born.
Okay, let's unpack this, because that completely flips the traditional narrative. If he was restoring something, it means the Mongol Empire had this deep political DNA.
It did.
So our mission today is to explore that DNA, what Genghis Khan inherited versus what he actually invented. If he didn't invent the state, where did this structure actually come from?
Well, to understand the 13th century Mongol world, we have to look back. We have to look at the historical superpowers that preceded them.
Superpowers.
We're talking about the great steppe empires, specifically the Turkic Khaganates. These weren't minor tribal confederations. These were vast, sophisticated states stretching from China to the Black Sea.
And when were they around?
We're talking about the Great Turkic Khaganate in the 6th through 8th centuries, and then followed by the Uyghur and Kyrgyz Khaganates.
So this is centuries of state-building experience already on the ground.
Precisely. And what's crucial here is that the foundational elements of imperial construction, the military command structure, the administrative organization, they were already established Turkic practices.
How long before?
500 years before Genghis Khan unified the tribes.
Wait a minute. You're saying the Mongols, who we think of as the ultimate disruptors, the innovators of warfare, they didn't even invent the administrative fundamentals that made their military so efficient?
They did not.
Give us a concrete example of this Turkic blueprint.
Okay, take the classic Mongol military and governmental setup. That division of the entire state and army into a right and a left wing.
Yeah.
That's not a Mongol innovation. That was standard Turkic administrative practice inherited from the 6th century Khaganates. And the most famous element, the decimal system.
Organizing into tens, hundreds, thousands.
Yes. That was also standard operating procedure across the Turkic steppe for centuries.
So that famous, perfectly organized war machine was basically running on a 500-year-old operating system.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
That's astonishing. And what about the title itself, Khagan?
Even the very title he claimed, Khagan Khan of Khans, is a Turkic political title. It signified a specific type of authority, the supreme ruler over all nomadic peoples living in felt tents.
So by claiming Khagan, he wasn't inventing a new role.
No, he was occupying the oldest, most recognized seat of power in the steppe world.
It seems like he was inheriting the technical specs of statehood, but this continuity goes even deeper than logistics, right?
Yeah.
The sources highlight this concept of El or El.
Yeah.
What exactly was this?
Right, this is where the political structure moves into the spiritual realm. El, or Il, is often translated simply as territory or state, but that's far too thin.
Okay.
In the Turkic worldview, the El was a sacred socio-political union. It was perceived as a living, breathing organism that encompassed the land, the people, the divine mandate, and the physical army all at once.
A living organism. So what happens if you lose your El?
In that world, losing your El was an existential catastrophe. It meant you literally ceased to exist as a subject of history. The group would scatter, lose their identity, and just cease to be politically viable.
And when Genghis Khan came along, the tribes were fragmented.
They had, in a sense, lost their shared El.
And he seized that moment.
He revived this deep-seated sacred idea by proclaiming the creation of the Yek Mongol Ulus, the Great Mongol State. He was explicitly presenting it not as a new start, but as a glorious restoration, a new purified incarnation of the ancient sacred Turkic El.
So he wasn't just conquering, he was restoring their historical cosmological existence.
Yeah.
That explains the massive ideological buy-in. But moving from ideology to reality, how did he staff his massive, newly restored empire? Did he just fill the posts with loyal but inexperienced Mongol chieftains?
That would have been a guarantee of administrative failure. Genghis Khan was, above all else, a pragmatist. When he conquered the Naimans and, crucially, the Uyghurs, he didn't destroy their established political machinery.
What did he do?
He essentially hired the state structure already in place.
You're talking about hiring conquered peoples to run your empire. That sounds like a major vulnerability.
It sounds risky, but the Igers were the crucial link. They were the direct heirs to the sophisticated culture and bureaucracy of the earlier khaganates. They spoke the language of governance,
So they became the civil service.
the civil service, and the teachers to the Mongol elite. They literally trained the new Mongol state how to function.
What specifically did the Igers provide that the Mongols lacked?
Oh, everything. They provided the vertical of power, that clear hierarchy of governance, the established tax collection system, and they introduced written record keeping using the Uyghur script, which became the first script for the Mongol language.
And the postal service. The Yam.
Yes. But the most impressive inheritance was the Yam.
The Yam. That's often treated like a side detail, but it was revolutionary, wasn't it?
Absolutely. The Yam was, in effect, the central nervous system of the restored empire. We're talking about a vast network of relay stations where fresh horses and riders were kept on call, allowing messages and high-priority travelers to just traverse the empire at incredible speed.
In the 13th century, that's like installing a fiber optic network across the largest contiguous empire in history.
It is. Without the Yam, Genghis Khan's commanders in Persia couldn't have effectively received orders from Karakorum. It was an inherited Turkic invention that was essential for administering the conquest, not just launching it.
So to sum up this first part, the administrative apparatus of the early Mongol Empire effectively spoke and wrote in a Turkic manner, built entirely upon centuries of existing experience.
He restored and refitted the existing palace of steppe statehood.
But an empire needs more than just a tax system and a fast post office. It needs legitimacy, a legitimacy that goes beyond just loyalty.
Exactly. And this is where we move from administrative blueprints to sacred legitimacy, or what the sources sometimes call blood magic.
Blood magic.
To achieve authority over all the vast tribes, a ruler couldn't rely on strength alone. He had to possess charisma, the charisma of celestial origin. This concept is Kut.
Cut the divine grace or life force. That sounds a bit abstract. How did a ruler prove he had it?
Kut was granted by heaven, and its possession was proven by concrete success. If a ruler secured victories in battle, if the livestock flourished, if the people were prosperous, those were undeniable, visible signs that heaven favored him.
And Genghis Khan's personal story was crucial here.
His whole narrative, his legendary escapes from captivity, his ability to rally small forces and defeat superior, established enemies like the Karaites, these were interpreted by the steppe peoples as irrefutable divine proof.
So his personal triumphs were the PR campaign for his divine mandate.
In a way, yes. They proved that Tengri, the sky god, had specifically chosen him over the old chieftains.
And this brings us right to the powerful mythological blueprint used to cement his clan's status, the Alangoa story.
Yes, the famous story from the secret history of the Mongols. It tells of Alangoa, the ancestress of Genghis Khan's clan, who, after her husband died, conceived sons after a celestial light entered her yurt in the guise of a fair-haired youth.
It sounds like something out of a myth cycle.
Which it is. But what's truly fascinating here is that this is not just a pleasant tale, it's a political and legal argument.
Wait, how is a celestial light story a legal argument? That sounds like a massive stretch.
It works because this plot is nearly identical to an ancient, established Turkic legal precedent for divine lineage. You look back at the founding myth of the Ashina clan, the founders of the great Turkic Khaganate centuries earlier.
And what was their story?
They, too, trace their lineage back to a miraculous celestial origin, often involving the celestial wolf. The Alangoa story is simply the Mongol update of that ancient Turkic plot device.
So by adopting that ancient successful template, Genghis Khan was essentially filling out the right paperwork for divine lineage.
Precisely. He used this powerful shared mythological framework to create the Altan Urig the Golden Clan. This was a direct, restored legacy of the Turkic political principle that only those born of the royal bone, like the Ashina and now the Chinggisids, had the legitimate God-given right to hold the supreme title.
And that idea proved extraordinarily powerful. It gave him authority above the tribal feuds.
It did. The sources make it clear that this mythological legitimacy was the unifying factor that transcended language or tribal differences. To rebel against Genghis Khan wasn't just political opposition.
It was going against the will of heaven.
The direct, undeniable will of heaven itself. And the weight of this concept was staggering. For the next 7 centuries across Central Asia, from the Crimean Khanate to the Mughals, a political leader could not be considered a legitimate ruler unless he was a Chinggisid by blood.
Wow. That is the long-lasting, tangible power of this restored Turkic myth.
It really is.
So, using this foundation, Genghis Khan established his right to rule internally, but he also needed an ideology that justifies global conquest. How did a steppe religion provide the mandate for world domination?
That brings us to Tengrianism and the eternal blue sky. This worldview was the final piece of the inherited ideological puzzle. Tengri, or Kok Tengri, was not merely a god. It was the highest justice, the physical sky, and cosmic law all rolled into one.
The ultimate order.
Yes, and you see this reflected in every decree they issued. Right?
Absolutely. The formula of power was inescapable. Every
Yeah.
single Chinggisid decree began with the words, "By the power of the eternal heaven."
And this declaration defined the ruler's role. It meant the Kagan was Tengriteg, Tengride Bomish, heaven-like and heaven-born, but he wasn't an absolute despot. He was merely the executor of heaven's will on earth.
Which also creates a crucial check on power then.
It does. If the Kagan ruled unjustly, if his people suffered, the religious rationale provided a political out. It was believed that heaven had turned away, and thus the Kagan lost his cut and his legitimacy. This accountability was embedded right in the doctrine.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. This belief system directly justified the entire concept of world expansion.
It provided the ultimate license. Tengrianism gave rise to a unique political doctrine. Since there is only one eternal blue sky, one heaven covering the entire earth.
There should logically be only one legitimate ruler on earth to execute its will.
Exactly. One God in heaven, one Khan on earth.
That is the ultimate non-negotiable global mandate.
It provides the moral and theological right to unify all lands. Any resistance to the expansion of the Mongol state was viewed not as a simple declaration of war, but as an act of rebellion against the divine cosmic order itself.
It transforms warfare into a sacred duty.
It does. The mission was to establish the Pax Mongolica, the Great Peace, a stable world where, famously, a maiden with a golden platter could walk from ocean to ocean.
That promise of stability and cosmic order is an incredible draw, especially in a fractured world. But this worldview also provided something highly unusual for an empire founded on conquest.
Genuine religious tolerance.
Right.
It did, and again, this wasn't modern secularism.
Well.
It was a profound Tengrian conviction derived from those Turkic traditions. Since Tengri is the infinite, encompassing sky, all the various human religions, Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, are simply different acceptable paths reaching toward the same ultimate source.
And Genghis Khan had that great line.
The famous one, yes.
Yeah.
He said, all religions are like 5 fingers on one hand.
That flexibility must have been fundamental to absorbing the diverse populations they conquered.
Oh, absolutely. This Turkic established flexibility allowed the empire to absorb the best minds from across the world. Instead of forcing conversion, they hosted intellectual debates between Muslims, Nestorians, Buddhists, and Taoists right there in the Kagan's headquarters.
That ability to integrate rather than alienate must have been crucial.
Crucial to the empire's long-term administrative and scientific viability, it's a direct continuation of practices from the cosmopolitan Turkic Khaganates.
And this sense of cosmic order wasn't just for high politics or religious policy. It trickled down into daily life, governing behavior, even how they built their homes.
The sources show that the very structure of nomadic existence was designed to align with Tengrianism. The yurt itself, the traditional dwelling, was conceived as a model of the microcosmos.
How so?
The circular dome symbolized the eternal sky, and the central opening, the Shanirak, symbolized the direct, visible connection with divine light. Every time you entered your home, you were subconsciously reinforced in the cosmic order.
And even their famous law code, the Yasa, reflected this sacred geography.
Exactly. The famous ecological ethics, like the prohibition in the Yasa against polluting water and soil, wasn't just dictated by hygiene, it was by sacred awe of nature. Water and soil were manifestations of Tengri's power, and to defile them was an offense against the cosmic law.
Everything was aligned.
From the design of a tent to the grand plan for world rule, it was all aligned with the eternal blue sky.
So what does this all mean when we synthesize everything we've looked at? The military systems, the sacred myths, the global ideology. Did Genghis Khan innovate anything at all?
What he did was something much rarer and perhaps more effective than pure innovation. He was a master synthesizer. The Mongol Empire was the perfect explosive culmination of the great Turco-Steppe civilization.
So the Turkic Khaganates provided the state blueprints.
The detailed blueprints, including the administrative structures and the yam, the ancient mythology provided the sacral meaning, the kut and the altan urug, to give him legitimacy.
And Tengrianism provided the expansive, unifying global ideology.
And a justification for total rule.
So without that robust 7th-century-old Turkic foundation, the administrative experience, the structure, the faith Genghis Khan would have remained just one of many ambitious tribal chieftains.
Exactly what our sources suggest. His genius was in recognizing the most powerful, tested structures lying in the historical ruins and ruthlessly combining that inherited Turkic form with Mongol will to create something truly world-changing.
This raises an important question for you, the listener, as you look at world events today.
Mhm.
How often do we, in history and politics, mistake a highly effective revival or restoration of deeply embedded cultural or institutional principles for genuine, out-of-the-blue innovation?
What other world-changing figures, whether they're military, political, or business leaders, were actually skilled restorers who merely utilized the best tools lying in the historical ruins? That is something for you to explore on your own.